I would say she has spent a lot of time on your side of the table as much as she has on this one. So welcome, Monique. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm great. I'm excited to chat with you and hopefully answer some questions from founders.
So why don't we start with give us the inside version of that very impressive bio that I just walked us through. Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I started as an entrepreneur. So I started two different companies, one in mobile shopping space and then another in media. I moved to San Francisco in 2008, sort of not necessarily on a whim, but I didn't know anyone in San Francisco, but I knew that I really wanted to get closer to people building interesting things in technology. So I moved here. I came to visit in like August of 2008, and I moved 30 days later. Um, and
Wow.
I've been here ever since.
Was that
Um,
from Florida?
that was from Florida. Yeah, absolutely. I started my second company here, and I also started a community of founders and started sort of like introducing founders to the VCs that I knew, trying to help them in the early days of their companies, and sort of realized that I was doing all of the work of the VC without the fund behind me um, to back these amazing founders. And so decided to fix that. My first job in venture was at 500 startups. I was on the seed team and also invested in sub-Saharan Africa a little bit. So got a lot of like global investing experience. Then I left 500 and started scout investing for Lightspeed, and also advised SoftBank on standing up their Emerge program, which is an accelerator within the Vision Fund. And then ultimately, I was sort of trying to decide between joining a firm and starting my own firm. And I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. And so the choice was really easy to start my own firm based on that. And then I started Cake Ventures. Um, we I started having conversations in earnest with investors for the fund in 2020, early 2020, obviously, into 2019, beginning of 2020, and then everything shut down because of the pandemic. But I was able to get to my first close in March of 21 after people started to talk again, and then it was kind of off to the races after that. And I closed Cake Fund One and started investing out of it.
So Cake has a really interesting thesis. Do you want to kind of how would you describe it?
Yeah, so we are a generalist fund with a thesis. Our thesis, my thesis, is that alongside these big technological shifts that are happening, the biggest change to essentially the internet user base are demographic changes. And so I invest in companies that exist at the intersection of technology and demographic change. There are three big layers that I like to focus on. First layer is aging and longevity, 10,000 people turning 65 every single day in the US. Lots of opportunity to help people age in place, or have live longer, happier lives, healthier lives. Second layer of the cake is the increased spending power of women and how the female dollar drives companies to billion-dollar plus outcomes. And then third layer of the cake is the rise of a new majority where people of color as a broad group become the majority in the United States and are already a global majority. And so within those, I invest in a lot of things. I do a lot of healthcare investing. I do a lot of some consumer investing. I invest in the future of work, especially non-office work or, deskless work. So it gives me a lot of room to sort of play and invest in companies that I think are going to be, um, you know, massive, outsized, successful companies.
What do you think? I mean, in all three, I was going to ask you specifically about the female economy, but actually all three of those layers are super interesting. What
Yeah.
what are some of the most exciting opportunities that you're seeing within those layers?
So within the female economy layer, I spend a lot of time in looking at and investing in women's health. I just recently invested in a fertility company that speaks to that layer of the cake. So I'm interested in all aspects of women's health, a little bit less on the consumer facing side. I'm interested in more B2B focused women's health. I think, we've done a lot around the consumerization of healthcare, and now it's really time to help healthcare systems deliver better healthcare for their patients. And so I'm really interested in that. Within the rise of a new majority layer of the cake, I recently invested in a company called Mama Foods, which is grocery delivery for the US Latino market. So taking that like one aisle that is dedicated to all ethnic foods, and really giving one of the fastest growing groups in the US, they're dedicated, here's where you go if you are looking for your Colombian foods, your Venezuelan foods, your Cuban foods, like, the diaspora of Latinos is so vast, and it's a huge opportunity. So I think that's a really interesting, thing to invest on top of.
Yeah, I'm like, I love my corner Mexican. My corner Mexican. They don't have any Costa Rican food anywhere. There was this one
Yeah.
time in our local like major supermarket that they brought these cookies, chiqui, which are Costa Rican cookies, and I bought like 5 boxes. I think that I just, like rated the
Yeah,
entire.
I mean, from the
Then they never
consumer
came back.
behavior that we're seeing in that company, we're seeing a lot of like people just like buy
Hoarding.
bulk items of like they haven't been able to get these cookies, these arepas, these
Yeah.
things that they love, these candies that they love, and they're just like buying it because it has such like you know memories are attached to food, right? And so it's
100%.
absolutely how people maintain their culture and maintain memories.
That's absolutely right. I could go on about this part because
So could I have
like
I
the coffee is like, imported in like the suitcases of anybody who comes to visit me. They have to bring coffee, otherwise they're not allowed to stay in my house. Um,
I will keep that in mind then.
yeah, but it's a specific, it's like café rey, it's like a specific coffee in Costa Rica. Um, okay, so now let's talk about sourcing.
Yeah.
How and where do you source your deals?
Like most VCs, I feel like the best sourcing comes from our network. And so, talking to founders often know founders. And so talking to founders who are in my portfolio about who are the founders that they like and respect and love working with. That's always one aspect. Certainly talking to other VCs about which companies they're excited about. One of the things that we do that is very different from a lot of funds is we are very prolific in writing about our insights. And so I wrote a white paper called Gray New World about the aging economy. I wrote a paper called The $1 trillion Female Economy about that second layer of the cake. I'm writing in the middle of wrapping up a white paper on the go-to-market strategy for the aging consumer and their caregivers. So those things kind of like drive a lot of top of funnel deal flow for us. And they're very much evergreen in that they will deliver for years to come. But one of the other things that I do is I actively, reach out to founders who I see on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever, if they're building something that I, am interested in. And so, the oftentimes founders will get cold emails, but they're coming from an analyst or an associate. The cold emails I send are coming straight from me. They're just like you're just like me reaching out to founders that I want to get to know and see if there is a potential to partner.
Um, do I feel like um when it comes to early stage founders, like I really think that the world is like a tale of two cities, right? Like there's like you're already really well connected and kind of fall into the pattern. And then there's the kind of you don't fall into the pattern and are not already well connected and de-risked. And I feel like that second bucket of founders, which is the majority of our community, um, we and they get a lot of advice to kind of build relationships first. Are you the type of VC that like likes to sort of get to know the founder for a long period of time before you're kind of hit up for money, or like where do you fall on that spectrum of like, hey, let's have a few meetings, like let's see you execute versus like, no, I can come into the round, like, I can know you for a week and know that you are the person I want to invest in.
I'm probably somewhere in the middle of that. I do like it when I have time to create a relationship. And when I say relationship, what I really mean is I want to see this founder execute on something that they told me that they were going to execute on.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes that takes time. So, if you are in the middle of a round and you send me a message and you're like, hey, I'm raising a seed round and we're closing in a week. Would you like to come into the seed round? I'm probably like, no,
Mhm.
I'm I'm good actually. Like I'm almost never gonna do that.
Yeah.
But if you are running a process and we don't know each other and you reach out to me and say, hey, I just started raising my seed round. I would love to tell you what I'm building and tell you what we've been able to do so far. It doesn't take months and months for us to get to know each other, for me to get to a yes. The last deal that I did, the fertility company, actually probably the last two deals that I did, we started at roughly the same time. I probably got to know them. It probably took about a month for me to go from first phone call to through diligence and to, sending them an email to make a commitment.
Mhm. Um, so if you're seeing kind of this ocean of opportunity, what makes something stand out for you? Like the company, the idea, the team, like what are the different things that like
It's
this is
certainly team
amazing?
first. It's definitely team first.
Mhm.
It's, you know, um, do I think this founder has uh one, an amazing insight into this market opportunity that not a lot of people have discovered yet? And two, do I think that this founder has the ability to execute on building a big company in this category? Um, and, sometimes it's, well, they've, worked in this industry and seen the problem up close and decided to leave, their job and start a company. Or sometimes it's, they have had a personal experience with this, and they have a very personal story and a drive to, build something in this category. It can be many different things, but it's really trying to identify like what is that special founder secret sauce that this team has that someone else probably doesn't have. And then, beyond that is, are they building something in a market that is either big already or going to be significantly sized, a growing market?
Mhm.
And do they have the ability, the team together to execute on the opportunity?
On the flip side of that, what are some common reasons that you pass on a deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the reasons are they're so varied, and sometimes the reasons have absolutely nothing to do with the founder. So I think founders should know that just because a VC passes on your company, that doesn't mean that we think it's a bad company. I pass on deals because I've already invested in something that is very similar. I pass on deals because I feel the team is not complete. Um, Meaning, usually that means technical talent. Especially a heavy reliance on outsourced technology is just not where I tend to invest, or the types of companies that I tend to invest in. Um, Maybe I've already invested in something like this a long time ago, and a lot of investors still have scar tissue from
Hard
companies that
tissue.
don't do well.
My favorite Red Hot Chili Pepper song. Right.
So there are lots of, reasons why we may pass on your company.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what do you wish um founders knew before they come and meet you?
I really like for founders to have a really good understanding of their metrics and the metrics that move their business. Even if it's at the very earliest stages, even if this is a pre-seed, pre-revenue company, there are some metrics that will matter to your business, and you have to be able to talk about those in a way that helps me know that you understand the business, and also helping me understand the competitive landscape. I think one of the biggest red flags is when a company, is pitching and I ask them, well, who else is doing something like this in your category? And they say, well, we don't have any competitors. You always have a competitor.
Do.
Sometimes the competitor is the way that the potential customer or the user is executing this without technology. That is still your competition.
Mhm.
And so just understanding what the competitive landscape actually looks like and how the user, how the customer is getting to the thing, solving the problem that they have, even without technology, is really important.
Yeah, I feel like that I wish founders knew that like if they ever tell me I have no competition, I am immediately like Googling their category as they speak. Um,
Yeah,
Especially if I'm not an expert, I'm like, okay, great. So are you the top result? Right?
right.
Like, um,
Exactly.
yeah, that kind of like, I don't know. Like my strategy professor used to say, competition is good. If it wasn't for competition, we would not all drink fizzy black sugar water. Like if Pepsi and Coke didn't both exist, we would not all be, drinking soda.
Competition is great. It tells me that there is a market there, right? It tells me that there is a problem to be solved. If you
Yeah.
truly don't have any competition, that kind of means you don't have a market.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
You know,
Let's dig in a little bit more on this traction. And for now, let's keep it at the kind of pre-seed world. You do a
mhm.
lot of pre-seed, right? You're like primarily pre-seed and seed.
I'm primarily seed and I do some pre-seed.
Okay. So let's start with the pre-seed and then we can talk about kind of seed and A. So what is a meaningful level of traction these days? Like why does it feel like
Yeah.
the advice is inconsistent to founders? I know that's a leading question, but
Well, I think the ball has moved,
Mhm.
or the goalposts have moved. And the things that would get you to a pre-seed or even a seed round, and certainly a series A, in 2020, 2021, those are not the metrics that will get you there now. And so the bar has shifted. Um, you know, Traction for me in pre-seed comes in a few different flavors. If it's a sort of company who should be making revenue very early, then yes, I'm going to be interested in the revenue, right? If you are an e-commerce company and and you're raising a pre-seed round, I kind of expect you to have sold something.
Mhm.
Um, if you are an AI company raising a pre-seed round, maybe you haven't even built anything yet, right? But maybe you can talk about the market opportunity, you can talk about your background, you can talk about, the AI research you may have done or that your CTO has done. There is something to talk about, at every stage. Um, in most companies, I am not expecting uh, a pre-seed company to have millions of dollars in revenue. In most cases, that is not the case. But I am expecting you to have, built something, put it in the hands of some customer, gotten some customer feedback, and shown some desire for a customer to pay something to have the product that you are building or will build. And I think that's really important. I speak to a lot of, well, not a lot of people. I don't actually speak to a lot of people who do this, but I speak to a not insignificant number of people who want to build something and want to raise money to build it. And they haven't done any customer validation. They haven't put together an MVP. They haven't used bubble.io to like build out some prototypes. They have done no work. And they're raising a pre-seed, or they say that they will get started when they have raised some money. And that is just not typically that's not typically a company that is going to get funded in most cases, unless you are a founder who has a background, who has exited a company before, who has, a lot of things that I think most people just don't have.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that like we call it evidence of demand. Like, have you tested evidence of demand? And what I would add is like the evidence of demand should be directly like linearly related to the thing that you're actually building, like not tangentially, right? Like you don't take like a consulting business and say this means that people will buy this software.
Yeah.
So let's move kind of a little down the line to the seed and Series A. So specifically the Series A crunch.
Mhm.
And just to kind of level set among everyone, I would say like 5 years ago, and correct me if you have different numbers, but there was an expectation that like 30% of seed companies would raise a Series A, and now it's more like 10 or 15%. So what are you seeing in your portfolio? How are you advising founders? How are you thinking about like I kind of want to hear both the sort of how should founders think about this, and
Mhm.
also how do you think about it in your portfolio construction and like your investment in seeds?
So there is definitely a Series A crunch. Series A's are getting done, however. I have some getting done in my portfolio right now. So, people are investing. Um, I think that the revenue expectations, the traction expectations are very different now than they were a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, you might have been able to raise a Series A on, a million and a half in revenue. And now that is absolutely not enough by any
Not even
means,
close, yeah.
not even close. We're talking 3 million plus. Sometimes, I mean, there are some healthcare companies in my portfolio who are doing 5 million in revenue. So
I know that one.
what?
I know that one.
Yes, exactly. The bar has certainly moved,
Yeah.
right? And so I think, and it has not moved equally, right? The bar is different in healthcare than it is in consumer tech. The bar is different in consumer tech than it is in AI. The bar is different in AI than it is in straight up B2B SaaS. Like the bar is different. And so I think it's less about, you know, trying to hit this artificial mark that investors say that they want to have. Like, I see some founders say, well, investors said that if I got to $3 million in ARR, then I could raise a Series A. It is less about the dollar amount than about the business you are building. It's really about, have you found product market fit? Have you found a repeatable go-to-market? What are the unit economics? It's really about what is the strength of your business, and revenue is like one piece of that. And if you aren't able to articulate the other things that surround revenue, then you're not going to get to a Series A.
Um, is the so it sounds like the revenue is kind of a baseline requirement, but the round, it's sort of like it's like your ticket to raise, but it doesn't actually guarantee the raise. What about like the growth? Like what kind of growth expectations are Series A investors looking for?
That's a great question. I mean, TBD. I mean, it is different for every category. And, it's totally different for every category, and I'm seeing different numbers sort of bandied about based on category that you're in or type of company that you're trying to build. Um, yeah, it's unfortunately not standardized.
Um, so one of the really interesting questions that came in through Luma, um, is around like this tension between
Mm.
having a big vision and proving something out that is small. And I think it kind of, you know, founders get this advice to like pitch a really, really, really big company, but at the same time to start at a place where like, do things that don't scale or what have you. So
Mm.
like, how do you reconcile those two and how should founders think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I directly ask founders what kind of company they're trying to build. You know, I there are two things I want to hear in a pitch, and one is, what have you built or are you building right now? And then two, how does that track to the type of company you are trying to build 5, 7 years from now? And being able to articulate both of those things are really important. So saying that, we are building this product today as a wedge into the bigger market around, let's say, learning and development, right? Corporate learning and development. Being able to say something like that and articulate how big that market is and help people understand that it's not just like the product that you are laser focused on today, but it's also, a foot in the door to like a much bigger opportunity. That's really how you have to kind of thread the needle between both of those two needs. Because, I'm digging in on like what gets this company to $100 million in revenue. I'm digging into is what are the other product needs that can be layered on top of this first product that you're building? Can this product get you to $100 million in revenue, or are there other things that you will need to build on top of this? And what could those things potentially be? Right. I'm both asking founders to like tell me, give me the pragmatic view in the moment, and then give me the broader vision for the future of the company.
And then there's this expectation that you're going to be pivoting, right? As a founder,
Yeah.
like pivot fast. So like, can we talk through that? Like, how big is a pivot? How like, I guess I feel like sometimes founders, or at least in my experience, I see a lot of specifically women on this one, um, feel like they have to stick to the thing that they said that they were going to do.
Mhm.
Because it's like more connected to their personal mission, or because it's like more connected to their story, or because they're more afraid of failure and the kind of downstream consequences of like failing. So like, at what point do you think founders should be pivoting? And like, how do you actually do that? And like, how do you not lose the trust of your investors when you do that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the thing that you said you were going to do is that you were going to build a big venture scale business. That is actually the thing you said you were going to do. So if doing that means that you pivot into something that you think is better, more aligned, and more able to become a large business, then I would rather have a founder pivot than spin their wheels on something that is never going to work. I think good pivots are when a founder has communicated well and effectively. If you send me an email about a pivot and I haven't heard from you in 6 months, I'm a lot less likely to be supportive of a pivot. Or it will just be like, oh, great, go pivot.
Yeah.
Good, yeah. There certainly won't be any money attached to that
Yeah.
pivot.
Yeah.
you know? Um, but like really good communication with your investors around what is working, what is not working, how you're thinking about it, why you think it's not working, what are the experiments that you've run to try to find something that will work, and what the results of those experiments have been. I think that is actually how you get people on board with a pivot. Um, and I think going dark and going silent, um, and then, trying to pivot, but, needing additional support and capital, that's a really difficult pivot at a different place to be in.
I would say like the kind of going dark and going silent is just like never a good thing in
Yeah.
general. Like you can't expect anything at the other end of going dark and going silent. How do you, and this is just my question that I'm throwing at you. How big is your portfolio? How many companies have you invested in?
I'm 21 as of this week.
Okay, congrats. Um, Legal drinking age. Um, So how often do you communicate with your founders? Like, are they sending you consistent emails? Like, how do you set that expectation? How often do you meet with them?
Yeah, I expect at least quarterly updates. There are some times when I will just send them an email and say, how are things going? You know, if I find that I haven't talked to someone in a while. There are some companies that are on a regular monthly call cadence. That's usually when they are like deep in product building or, at a very specific inflection time in their companies. Others are sort of more ad hoc, meaning I will just, look at the updates, but also make sure that I proactively reach out on things that are important.
Um, how often do you think founders should be communicating with prospective investors, like prior to going into a fundraise?
I think putting them on like your sanitized quarterly update email is a good way to keep investors who haven't invested in your company, like kind of keep those leads warm. I have companies that I haven't invested in, but who continue to keep me updated, and I appreciate and often read those emails. And so I think, you know, I think good communication is really important to being a founder, and one of those pieces of communication is like, how well do I write quarterly updates? And sometimes it can be monthly updates, but it is at least quarterly, sometimes monthly, but being able to like effectively communicate with both existing investors and potential future investors is really important.
Mhm. Um, as these founders, I don't know if this has happened in your portfolio or not, but and actually before I ask
Probably
this
has.
question,
Everything.
um, and as I ask this question, I want to open it up for questions from the audience. So if you want to kind of, what do you want us to talk about? Put it in the comments. We'll start kind of picking out questions from the comments in just a few minutes. So please go ahead. There's I want to say there's no topic off limits, but that feels like a really scary statement to say because it's being recorded. So like maybe there's off, I don't know. You can test that theory.
Let's see.
Let's see what comes back. So please, encouraging everybody to just ask us your questions. And going back to communications and kind of pivoting and, so, at some point, you know, at some point, for some founders, it's time to call it a day, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, and, coming off of like the biggest like boom in investments in 2020, 2021. For a lot of founders, 2023, 2024, and 2025 have been like the time to call it a day.
Yeah.
So that's hard, right? Like when you're on the founder side, like I've shut down companies before, like it's hard. And sometimes you want to avoid the topic with yourself. You don't know how to talk about with your team, with your investors. Let's talk through like how do you advise your founders when they feel like when it's possible that they're at the end?
Yeah. I think one being as an investor, I think it's really important that you broach the subject. I think sometimes founders feel that they are letting investors down, or they've wasted their money, or, they have a lot of feelings around obligation to continue going that are sort of couched in, I don't want to disappoint my investors. And, investors have a portfolio of companies, and, we expect some companies to not work, and we expect some companies to, not be able to go all the way. And so as an investor, I think it's really important that we kind of temperature check in those companies that are, kind of in the red zone around, like, hey, do you think that there is a path here to building a business, or do you think it's time to shut the company down and wrap up and, return any remaining capital to investors, or, just shut it down if there is no remaining capital? And letting them know that that is an option is really important. Because I have seen founders sort of spin their wheels forever when they could be out dedicating their life to something that will work and is a much better option for them.
Have you had those conversations? Like, when you have that conversation, is it different depending on like whether you invested in the company or not? Like, would you tell? It's kind of a trick question, but like,
I mean, I wouldn't have that conversation if I didn't invest in the company. So yeah. I think it's a conversation that has to be approached with a lot of empathy, but, I think just being really direct with founders about where you see them at right now, and saying, look, I don't think that you have discovered a business, or I don't think that you have nailed the go to market. The likelihood that you are going to find something that works is becoming increasingly low. Is this time for us to think about shutting this business down?
mhm. Yeah. Um, for some founders, there's a fear of not getting another chance, right? That like they don't get to fail up.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell that founder?
I mean, you can fail in this business, or, you can fail in many different ways. I think managing the psychology around, not having multiple chances, but sort of spinning your wheels into the earth is also not the answer, right? So certainly I get that a lot of people don't get multiple chances or get to fail up, but also continuing to spin your wheels on something is not the answer either. And so I think, like, you've got to be able to free yourself from, feeling the feelings of, if I fail, everyone's going to be so mad at me, or if I fail, I'm never going to get the opportunity to do this again. Or if I fail, XYZ will happen. Well, the business is failing. Let's start there. You don't know what's on the other side of that unless you stop spinning your wheels on this and go toward the next thing that could be the greater thing, the better thing. Even if that greater, better thing is a job that pays you consistently so that you can take care of your family.
Mhm.
Like, sometimes that is like the greater thing that is on the other side,
Yeah,
especially if something's not working.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I think like in this business, there's a lot of failure, and I think that the better question is not whether you fail, it's how you fail.
Yeah.
Like how you communicate, how you show up, how you like treat people, how you pick yourself up. I think that those are the better,
Yeah. I
markers of
mean,
whether you get a second chance or not.
not every company works, but there are founders that I would certainly invest in again because of how they communicated and how they behaved during the, you know, discovering that it's not going to work and then shutting down the company phase. And then there are other founders who I would never give another dollar to because of how they behaved during the like discovering that it's not working and then shutting down the company phase. So you obviously want to be in the first bucket, just in case you want to raise more money again. And, you know, I think being able to be like a responsible steward of capital is really important. And that requires communication, you know, seeing the problems early and being willing to address them and working with your investors to get to like some outcome that works for everyone.
I'm gonna pick one more question from the Luma because I really liked this question, and I know we have a as we normally do, we have a mixed gender audience, which is great and we love, but I'm gonna ask a question about women specifically. And that is around this feeling of scarcity that
Mm.
like you know sometimes you see or you experience in hyper competitive environments that the women are even more competitive with each other because it feels like there's room for one, right? Like there's not room for all. So how do you think about the specific question as the founder wrote it is how do women founders shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset and create more collaborative products? But I think the bigger theme is like, um, how do we rise? How do we all rise together? Like, what do you think? Like, can we all rise together? And what are some effective ways that we can do that? And kind of, um, it almost feels like a like game theory, right? Like, can we
Yeah.
all really kind of lift each other up, or is one person going to be a winner take all?
Yeah. I think one, we have to recognize the difference between healthy competition and feeling as though you are in a scarcity, um, you know, having that scarcity mindset and feeling that resources are scarce. And so that means that you can't introduce an investor to, you know, some other woman founder that you know, right? Um, and I think, you know, this also happens in venture capital circles, right? When women are raising funds and they sometimes they feel that they can't introduce their peer to an LP, when in actuality, like just like venture capital investors, LPs make multiple investments, and you should not feel as though you can't introduce someone because they might get something that you have. Um, I don't know what the path is to that in like that is a mental thing that you may have to even work out in therapy, but I mean, I'm serious. Go to therapy. I don't know.
Yes, I fully support therapy. Really good.
But, you know, you have to understand that like no one is holding you back from having something, and that I believe that I am going to have everything that I am meant to have. Um, and no one is holding me back from that. And once you kind of understand that, you can be like free with someone and say, hey, you should meet this LP that I know who could be interested in your fund, or you should meet this, you know, angel investor that I know who didn't invest in me, but maybe they'll invest in you.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? Like you just kind of want to see a lot more success.
Yeah.
Um, this has been like absolutely amazing. Let's start getting some questions from the audience. Thank you, Divya, for putting them in here. Okay, so first I'm gonna kind of pick this question that fills a gap in something that we talked about earlier. So we talked about pre-sin, we talked about Series A, but we didn't talk about the middle. And so can we like, at least from your point of view, what is like reasonable? This is what I want to see at the pre-seed, at the seed, and at the Series A.
At the pre-seed, I want to see a complete team. So that means, for me, that means someone who's actually able to build technology product,
Mhm.
and an understanding of their market, and some early signals of customer interest. Um, at the seed, I want to see some revenue. I want to see a go-to-market, some go-to-market strategy that they have defined and refined a little bit. I want to see a working product that is beyond the MVP prototype phase. And then, some early customer adoption. And at the Series A, I don't invest at Series A, but I can tell you what I would want to see if I
Yeah.
did.
Or what are you seeing
Yeah.
the expectations be for our portfolio companies?
Greater product market fit. Like the product market fit doesn't have to be a perfect match, but it's getting pretty close.
Mhm.
Good unit economics. I actually want to see good unit economics even at the seed stage. But I want to see even better unit economics at the Series A. A team that has found its rhythm and a founding team that has found the ability to hire around them and build a true company.
Mhm.
And then I believe we said revenue, right? Did we say revenue? We obviously want revenue at Series A.
We did not say revenue, but we should.
Yes, the revenue was silent but implied.
But we want loud revenue. Make the revenue
Yes,
loud.
we do.
Speaking of team, okay, so I can't find where this question was, but how do you how do founders, especially in the very early days, um how do you hire when you're super early, you can't pay well, you don't necessarily know what you need. Like, what
Yeah.
advice for founders who need to hire?
So there are two things. One, sometimes you shouldn't be hiring. You should be finding a partner or a co-founder,
Mhm.
right? And then you should be giving up, relevant equity to get that person on your team. At all stages, you should be giving up some equity to get people on your team because you don't have any money. And so the thing that you do have is equity.
Mhm.
Um, when it does come to roles that you want to actually hire for, you have to find people who think of this as like, this is mission, not mercenary, right? They have an affinity toward, wanting to build this with you, and they are willing to take a lower salary, supplemented by an equity bump in order to do that. And so I see sometimes founders trying to hire people at low salary and also not give them relevant equity. And I'm like, that doesn't work. That's not how this works at all. You're gonna have to give up some equity. So yeah, I think it's, trying to like figure out whether you should be courting a co-founder or whether you should be hiring someone and giving money plus equity.
Where do you fall in the kind of co-founder split question? Like, um, do you invest in 50/50s? Do you like, are there any kind of thoughts that you have around how founders should think about splitting equity?
It depends. In most cases, it should be a 50-50 split. In some cases, like where the first person did the bulk of the work, or the other person had a job while they were also a co-founder, like then those splits should be different. But like the most vanilla way to do it is 50-50, but there are reasons why 50-50 might not work. What I don't like to see is when I look at a cap table and one person has like, 80% of the equity, and there is no reason why this other person has very little.
Yeah.
Like that's always going to be a question for me.
Yeah. I feel like I hate 50/50s. Like, I almost always have a conversation with founders when they have a 50/50 split. It's actually, I have like two flags. One is 50/50 and one is 90/10. If it's 90-10, it's not a co-founder, it's an employee, and like you are not being honest with yourselves about it. And if it's 50-50, sometimes it's truly because they are 50-50 partners, but in my experience, most of the time that like founders have 50-50 is because they can't have difficult conversations with each other, which to me is like that's the flag. It's like, can
Yeah,
you, if you have like a like distinctly different skill sets, and one of them is the central skill set here, are you
yeah,
able to have a conversation about who's really the boss? Or, right, like, is this masking a bigger issue?
yeah.
But I know that investors kind of go on sort of both
I
sides.
don't think it's 50-50 uh as voting power or any sort of power. It just means like straight up the equity is split 50-50 because we are equal co-founders in this business.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't track to voting power or who has more skills or anything to that to
yeah.
that degree. Not for
Um,
me.
okay, so now let's move into how do founders approach, so there's like several questions around like how how do they approach you slash how do they approach an investor at the pre-seed? Like what does a good cold email look like? What is the best way to try to get in front of you slash in front of a like a strong pre-seed investor?
Yeah. So I'm gonna specifically kind of uh go towards Cindy's question, um, which is like, do you prefer just a few key points about the company or more lengthy description with a lot of details? Definitely a few key points. I am not going to read a very long email with multiple paragraphs of text about the company. What I actually want, and this will differ from investor to investor, what I actually want is like, here's who I am. Here are some like clear and concise bullet points about the business that tell who is the team, what are we building, what are some like traction areas, ideally with some numbers in there. Um, a pet peeve of mine is like telling me something about a company that does not involve numbers. Um, and what are you doing? Are you raising a pre-seed? Are you raising a seed? Did you raise a pre-seed before and now you're raising a seed? Who led your pre-seed? Who like give me sort of the funding story a little bit so that I can understand like, is this a Series A company? So I'm not going to invest in it, but like, thank you for reaching out. Or is it something that I actually can and will invest in? I also have a TikTok about cold emails. So
You have a what?
I have a TikTok video about cold emails. So you can
Oh,
also,
can we share it? Can you like send it to
um,
us and we will
I'll,
share it afterwards
sure,
with
I'll
everyone?
send it to you.
Yeah. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not cool.
I am sporadically on TikTok.
I just know it's a time suck, and one thing that I don't have a lot of is time.
Yeah,
Um,
I've divested from Twitter. So
yes, yeah. Well, we miss you. We miss you in that hellscape. Um, actually, thank you, Najee, for this great wrapping question. How did you arrive at your fund thesis? This is a great question. Why are you passionate about aging in the longevity? But like, how did you get at this fund thesis?
yeah, it's actually not that exciting of an answer, unfortunately. I sort of look back at my track record and what I had invested in and realized that I was always investing in demographic changes.
Mm.
So like my first deal at 500 Startups was a company called Blavity, which is now one of the biggest Black media platforms. I also invested in Minted Cosmetics, a beauty brand for women of color. So that touches two layers of the cake. I invested in a company called Silvernest in the aging category. I had always been investing in demographic change. And when you go out to raise a fund, a lot of it is about what will LPs pay to put you in business to do. They will pay to put you in business to do what you have already proven yourself to be able to do.
Mhm.
And I've always been interested in demographic changes and demographic shifts and how those shifts impact technology. And so that it was just very obvious to me that that's what I should be investing in.
Um, this was super fun. You are absolutely
Yes.
awesome. This is really fun. We need to get together again really soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing
More
this.
hugs. Now,
Parting
now.
words for people. How can people get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
You can, I'm Monique at cake.vc, and you can also reach me on LinkedIn. Just look for my name, Monique Woodard. You can also tweet at me. I still have that account.
I'll make an exception.
I will answer direct, direct tweets,
We'll
but
ask James. Um,
trying not to be on the hellscape,
um, one final.
protecting my mental health, protecting my peace.
That's a therapy, I'm telling you, Thursday mornings. Um, okay, final question. What can our community do for you?
Oh, geez. Honestly, if you see me write something, elevate it, amplify it. I'm going to be writing a lot more. I'm getting ready to release the white paper on go-to-market strategies for an aging consumer. So that will be out there in the world pretty soon. I also have some other things I'm writing. So you see it, give it a like, post it on Twitter.
It's easy. We can do that. We can do that. Maybe I'll retweet you.
Uh, I would have to tweet it in order for it to be retweeted, but
All right. Well, I'll do it on LinkedIn, although I don't have as many followers there. Monique, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thank you for spending your
thank you,
Wednesday
everyone. Thanks for the
morning
question.
/
It was fun.
afternoon. This was super fun. We are taking a break in August because I am going on vacation. And so no fireside chat in August, but we will be back in September, the first Wednesday of September, to do one of these conversations with amazing founders and VCs. So thank you, everybody. I hope all of you take a little bit of vacation this summer and spend some time with your family and with your loved ones, and recoup, because this job is a marathon, not a sprint. So with that, we will wrap. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Monique.